The transport plane touched down, and I stared through the small window with a grin I couldn't hide. "Ready to be a civilian again, Ethan?" one of the soldiers beside me asked. I laughed. "More than ready." "You got plans?" "Yeah," I said, reaching into my pocket and touching the small ring box. "Big plans." He whistled. "About time." I smiled and looked away. For years, one thought had carried me through long nights, endless patrols, and dangerous missions. Olivia. Every letter, every call, every memory had kept me moving forward. Once we stepped off the plane, I grabbed my bag and headed toward the parking lot. My phone buzzed. "Mason." I answered immediately. "Hey, brother." His voice sounded strange. "Ethan." "What's with that tone?" I asked. "What tone?" "The one that sounds like somebody died." A short silence followed. Then he forced a laugh. "Nothing, just tired." "Tired? I'm finally coming home. You should be celebrating." "Yeah, right. Of course." I frowned. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "Then why do you sound nervous?" "I'm not nervous." "You sure?" "Yeah." The conversation felt off. For a moment, I considered pushing harder. Instead, I shook my head. I was probably imagining things. "Well," I said, smiling, "get ready. I've got a surprise." "What kind of surprise?" "I'll tell you when I get there." Another pause. "Ethan." "Yeah?" "Nothing." I laughed. "Now you're definitely acting weird." "Just drive safe." "I will." After hanging up, I rented a car and started the long drive home. The farther I traveled, the more memories returned. I remembered meeting Olivia at a county fair. I remembered our first date. I remembered promising her that no deployment would change how I felt. Most of all, I remembered her voice. "I'll wait for you, Ethan." Those words had become my anchor. At a gas station, I stopped for coffee. The cashier smiled. "Long trip?" "Very long." "Heading home?" "Finally." "Best feeling in the world." I nodded. "You have no idea." Back in the car, I pulled out the ring box. The diamond caught the sunlight. I pictured Olivia's reaction. Maybe she'd cry. Maybe she'd laugh. Maybe she'd throw her arms around me before I could even finish asking. The thought made me smile the entire drive. Hours later, familiar streets appeared. Home. I rolled down the window and breathed deeply. Everything looked smaller than I remembered. The old diner. The hardware store. The church. Then I noticed decorations hanging across several streets. Colorful ribbons. Flowers. Signs. I slowed the car. "What's going on?" At first, I assumed there was a festival. Then I saw more decorations near Olivia's neighborhood. People were carrying flowers. Cars lined the streets. A large white tent stood in the distance. I laughed softly. Somebody picked a busy weekend to get married. The closer I got, the bigger the celebration seemed. Music drifted through the air. Children ran across lawns. Guests walked toward a decorated venue. My curiosity grew. As I turned the corner, a giant banner came into view. I barely glanced at it. Then my eyes caught a familiar name. Olivia. I sat frozen behind the wheel for what felt like forever. Olivia Carter and Mason Reed. The names didn't change, no matter how many times I read them. "No," I whispered. "No, this isn't real." My hand shook as I climbed out of the car. The wedding music drifted through the air. People laughed. People celebrated. Meanwhile, it felt like my entire world was collapsing. I forced myself toward the venue. Every step felt heavier than the last. As soon as I entered, conversation stopped. The room fell silent. Heads turned. Faces changed. Shock. Pity. Guilt. I saw all of it. Someone dropped a glass. Another person looked away immediately. A woman whispered, "Oh my God." My chest tightened. Then I saw her. Olivia, standing near the altar in a white wedding dress. For a second, she looked exactly the way I had imagined seeing her. The woman I loved. The woman I planned to marry. Then I saw who was standing beside her. Mason. My best friend. The man who had promised to watch over her while I was gone. The ring box felt like a brick in my pocket. Olivia's face turned pale. Ethan? Mason looked like he'd seen a ghost. I stared at both of them. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Finally, I forced out a laugh. A broken laugh. "Well," I said, "this is one hell of a surprise." "Ethan," Olivia said softly, stepping forward. "Don't." Her eyes filled with tears. "Please let me explain." I looked at Mason. "You explain." He lowered his head. "I can't." "Can't?" I stepped closer. "You couldn't answer a phone call honestly either." "Ethan." "No." My voice echoed through the room. "No, Mason. You don't get to say my name like we're still friends." The room remained silent. I turned back toward Olivia. "When did this start?" She wiped her eyes. "It wasn't planned." I laughed again. "That's not an answer." She struggled to speak. "After your second deployment." My stomach dropped. "How long?" "Ethan." "How long?" "Almost 2 years." The words hit harder than any punch. 2 years. 2 years of phone calls. 2 years of promises. 2 years of lies. I looked at Mason. "Did you ever think about telling me?" Every muscle in his face tightened. "Many times." "But you didn't." "No." "Why?" He swallowed hard. "Because I knew it would destroy you." I stared at him. "You mean because you wanted what belonged to me?" His head dropped lower. Nobody defended him. Nobody could. Olivia reached toward me. "Ethan, please listen." I stepped back. "Give me one reason." "We didn't mean for this to happen." I shook my head. "That's your explanation?" "We spent more time together." "While I was deployed." She nodded weakly. "We talked every day." "While I was risking my life." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I was lonely." The words felt like knives. "Lonely?" My voice cracked. "I spent birthdays alone, holidays alone, nights wondering if I'd survive. But you were lonely?" Several guests looked down. Nobody wanted to hear this. But nobody stopped it either. Olivia covered her face. "I never wanted to hurt you." Yet here we are. At that moment, I noticed her parents standing nearby. Richard Bennett wouldn't meet my eyes. Neither would Diane Bennett. I walked toward them. 3 days passed before I spoke to anyone. I stayed inside a cheap motel room on the edge of town. The television remained off. The curtains stayed closed. Most of the time, I just sat on the bed staring at nothing. My phone rang constantly. Olivia called. Mason called. Even a few family members called. I ignored every one of them. On the fourth morning, my phone rang again. I almost rejected it without looking. Then I noticed an unfamiliar name. Sophia Grant. After a moment, I answered. Hello? Ethan? Yes. This is Sophia. I searched my memory. Sophia? I'm Olivia's friend. My jaw tightened. If you're calling to defend her, don't. I'm not. The seriousness in her voice caught my attention. What do you want? I want to tell you the truth. I sat upright. What truth? The truth they didn't tell you. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I finally said, Go ahead. Sophia exhaled slowly. What happened didn't start 2 years ago. My stomach twisted. What do you mean? They were already emotionally involved before that. I clenched my fists. Explain. I watched it happen. Happen how? They talked constantly. Friends talk. This was different. I remained silent. She continued. Whenever you were deployed, Mason became the person Olivia went to for everything. That's what friends do. Not like this. I closed my eyes. Keep talking. Sophia hesitated. Olivia complained a lot. About me? Not exactly. Then about what? The military life. I laughed bitterly. Of course. She hated the uncertainty. The uncertainty? Waiting months for phone calls, wondering where you were, not knowing when you'd come home. I leaned forward. So instead, she found comfort somewhere else. Sophia didn't answer immediately. That silence told me enough. Finally, she said, Yes. The room felt smaller. Every word hurt. Yet somehow I needed to hear all of it. When did you first notice? A long time ago. Before my second deployment? Yes. I rubbed my forehead. So while I trusted both of them completely, they were growing closer. I looked toward the motel window. The betrayal suddenly seemed much larger. Not one moment. Not one mistake. A series of choices. A chain built over years. I asked quietly, Did everyone know? Not everyone? But some people did. Yes. I laughed without humor. Wonderful. I'm sorry, Ethan. Why are you telling me this now? Because what happened at that wedding wasn't fair. I remained silent. You deserved the truth. The truth would have been nice 2 years ago. I know. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then Sophia said, Can I tell you something else? Sure. You weren't the problem. I shook my head. You don't know that. I do. No. Ethan, I watched you fight for that relationship from thousands of miles away. I swallowed hard. You don't understand. I understand more than you think. Her voice softened. You stayed loyal. I stared at the floor. You made sacrifices. I didn't respond. You kept your promises. My throat tightened. Meanwhile, Olivia and Mason had broken theirs. The truth was painful. But it was also freeing. For days I had wondered what I had done wrong. Now I finally understood. This wasn't caused by one argument, one absence, one deployment. It happened because two people repeatedly chose themselves over honesty. Sophia spoke again. What are you going to do now? I looked at the engagement ring sitting on the table. A few days earlier, I would have said revenge, anger, payback. But now those things felt empty. I took a deep breath. I'm going to move forward. A month after the wedding, I left town. I didn't tell many people. There wasn't much to say. The place that once felt like home now felt like a collection of bad memories. So I packed my belongings, got into my truck, and drove toward a city where nobody knew my name. The first few months were harder than I expected. I rented a small apartment. I kept busy during the day. But nights were different. The silence always found me. One afternoon, I attended a veterans support meeting. At first, I sat quietly in the back. I wasn't interested in sharing my story. I just wanted to listen. After the meeting ended, a man approached me. First time here? That obvious? He laughed. A little? I shook his hand. Ethan. Daniel Brooks. We sat down near a coffee table. Daniel studied me for a moment. You look like someone carrying a lot of weight. I smirked. You charging for therapy? No. Good. Because my advice isn't worth much. Despite myself, I laughed. That was the first genuine laugh I'd had in months. Daniel smiled. See? You're not completely broken. That's encouraging. I'm serious. I looked away. I don't know. You miss someone? I hesitated. Something like that. Someone betray you? My eyes narrowed. How'd you know? Because I've been there. That caught my attention. Daniel leaned back. My situation was different, but pain usually leaves the same expression. I nodded slowly. For the next hour, we talked. Not just about relationships. About military life. About starting over. About feeling lost. Before leaving, Daniel said something that stayed with me. You can't build a future while living inside yesterday. I thought about those words for days. Eventually, I called him. You free for coffee? Look at that, he said. The quiet guy finally wants company. Don't make me hang up. He laughed. Over coffee, I told him about an idea I had. I've been thinking about starting a business. What kind? Security consulting. Daniel nodded. Makes sense. You think it's a mistake? No. You don't? I think sitting around feeling sorry for yourself is a mistake. I rolled my eyes. Thanks. You wanted honesty. He wasn't wrong. I had savings from my years of service. Not enough to make me rich, but enough to take a chance. So I started small. A tiny office. Basic equipment. Long hours. The first few weeks were rough. Then came my first client. A month later, another one. Every success felt small, but every success mattered. One evening, Daniel stopped by my office. He looked around and smiled. Not bad. It's still tiny. Every successful business starts somewhere. I sat back in my chair. Sometimes I still feel like I'm behind. Compared to who? I already knew the answer. Daniel shook his head. Stop comparing your life to theirs. I sighed. Easier said than done. Maybe. He pointed around the room. But this wasn't here 6 months ago. I couldn't argue with that. The business was growing. Slowly. But steadily. For the first time in a long while, I felt proud of something. A few weeks later, I received a call from an old acquaintance back home. We exchanged updates. Then he casually mentioned Olivia and Mason. Things aren't perfect over there. I remained quiet. What do you mean? They argue a lot. I stared out the office window. Really? Apparently. He hesitated. People say the honeymoon phase ended fast. I nodded once. 5 years passed faster than I ever expected. The small security consulting business I started in a rented office had grown into something much larger. I had employees, major contracts, a reputation I was proud of. One afternoon, I was preparing for a legal review involving a new business partnership when my assistant knocked on my office door. Your attorney is here. Send her in. A few seconds later, a woman entered carrying several folders. She smiled. Mr. Bennett? I stood and offered my hand. Ethan is fine. She shook it. Emma Sullivan. Nice to meet you. You too. We spent the next hour discussing contracts, liability issues, and partnership terms. When the meeting ended, Emma closed her folder. You ask better questions than most business owners. I laughed. Years of military training. That explains a lot. Is that a compliment? It depends. I smiled. For some reason, the conversation felt easy. Natural. Comfortable. As she prepared to leave, she paused. Can I ask something? Sure. Do you always look this serious? I laughed. Only on weekdays. Good. Why? Because I was worried you might be impossible to work with. That made me laugh again. After she left, I found myself smiling for the rest of the day. Over the following months, our professional relationship gradually became a friendship. Sometimes we'd meet for coffee after meetings. Other times we'd grab lunch. Nothing felt forced. Nothing felt rushed. One evening, we were sitting outside a cafe when Emma looked at me. You don't talk much about yourself. I stirred my coffee. Not much to tell. I doubt that. I shrugged. She smiled. See? That's exactly what I mean. I laughed. Maybe I'm boring. I don't believe that for a second. The conversation moved on. What surprised me most was that she didn't push. She never demanded explanations. Never pressured me to discuss my past. And because of that, I slowly started sharing it anyway. Months later, while walking through a city park, I finally told her everything. The deployments. Olivia. Mason. The wedding. The betrayal. When I finished speaking, Emma remained quiet for a moment. Then she said, That must have hurt. I nodded. It did. I'm sorry. Thank you. She didn't criticize Olivia. She didn't offer dramatic advice. She simply listened. That meant more than she probably realized. As time passed, my trust in her continued growing. One evening, Daniel noticed immediately. We were leaving the office after a meeting when he smirked. You're smiling again. I smile. Not like that. I rolled my eyes. Don't start. Emma? I sighed. Maybe. Daniel laughed. Took you long enough. Very helpful. I'm serious. He pointed at me. You finally look happy. For once, I couldn't argue. Because he was right. Meanwhile, occasional updates still reached me from back home. Most of them came through old acquaintances. One call stood out. Mason's having money problems. I frowned. Really? Yeah, things haven't been going well. What about Olivia? People say they're constantly arguing. I leaned back in my chair. The caller continued. Apparently the stress is affecting everything. When the conversation ended, I sat quietly for several minutes. Years earlier, news like that would have made me feel victorious. Instead, I felt almost nothing. No excitement. No satisfaction. No revenge. Just distance. The truth finally became clear. The life they chose wasn't my responsibility. Their problems weren't my burden. Their choices weren't my concern. What mattered was the life I had built. The business. The friendships. The future. And maybe, if things continued the way they were going, a relationship built on something stronger than promises. That evening, Emma called. Busy? Not anymore. Good. Why? I found a restaurant you need to try. I smiled. Is that an official legal recommendation? No. Then I'll risk it. Her laughter filled the phone. As I was reviewing reports in my office when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Sophia Grant. I hadn't spoken to her in almost a year. I answered. Sophia. Hey, Ethan. Everything okay? She laughed softly. That depends on how much drama you can handle. I leaned back. That's an interesting introduction. Trust me, it gets better. I already knew who she was about to discuss. Olivia and Mason? Exactly. I rubbed my forehead. What happened now? Sophia Sihil. Apparently Olivia has gotten very close to someone. My eyes narrowed. Someone? A man named Noah Turner. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I let out a slow breath. You're serious? Very. How close? Close enough that people are talking. I stared out my office window. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sophia continued. Mason found messages. That got my attention. What kind of messages? The kind that destroy trust. I shook my head slowly. Wow. That's not even the worst part. There's more? A lot more. I listened as Sophia explained everything. Arguments had become frequent. Friends had started distancing themselves. Financial problems were getting worse. The marriage that once looked perfect from the outside was falling apart. Finally, I asked, how's Mason handling it? Not well. I can imagine. People say he's angry all the time. I laughed quietly. The sound surprised even me. Sophia noticed. Feeling satisfied? I hesitated. Part of me was the part that remembered standing in that wedding venue. The part that remembered the humiliation, the betrayal, the lies. But another part of me felt something entirely different. Tired. Just tired. I don't know, I admitted. Sophia was silent. Then she said, Richard and Diane regret everything. That caught me off guard. Really? According to several people. I nodded slowly. They supported Olivia back then. I know. They thought she was making the right choice. And now? Now they wish things had happened differently. The conversation continued for several minutes before finally ending. After I hung up, I sat quietly in my office. The news should have felt like victory. Years ago, it probably would have. Instead, I felt strangely empty. That evening, I met Emma for dinner. The moment she sat down, she noticed something. You're distracted. Am I that obvious? To me, yes. I smiled faintly. Fair enough. What happened? I told her everything. Sophia's call. Noah Turner. The messages. The arguments. The collapsing marriage. Emma listened carefully. When I finished, she folded her hands. So how do you feel? I thought for a moment. Part of me thinks they deserve it. And the other part? I stared at my glass. The other part is exhausted. Emma nodded. I understand. Do you? Yes. I looked up. She continued gently. You spent years carrying that pain. I know. So let me ask you something. Okay. How much space are you still giving them in your life? I frowned. I was leaving the office when my phone buzzed. Emma smiled as she walked beside me. Long day? Yeah, I said. But it's done. She nodded. Dinner later? Of course. I got into my car, still thinking about upcoming projects. The engine had barely started when another message popped up. Unknown number. I opened it. I need to meet you. Please, it's important. I frowned. What the? Another message came instantly. It's Olivia. My grip tightened on the phone. Seriously? I muttered. I didn't reply. I just locked the screen and drove off. At dinner, Emma noticed something off immediately. You're quiet, she said. I'm fine. She raised an eyebrow. That sounded like a lie. I sighed. It's nothing major. Try again. I hesitated. It's Olivia. Emma didn't react the way I expected. No shock, no anger, just calm curiosity. What about her? She messaged me. Wants to meet. Emma leaned back slightly. And? And I ignored it. Why? I looked at her. Because I don't see the point. She nodded slowly. That's your choice. I paused. You're not upset? Should I be? She asked. I don't know. Emma reached across the table and touched my hand. Ethan, I trust you. Her words stopped me. I don't need to control your past, she said. I care about your present. I looked at her for a moment. That's not something I was used to. She smiled softly. I know. Later that night, another message arrived. Please, I'm not okay. I really need to talk to you. I stared at it longer this time. Something's off, I whispered. Emma glanced over. Still her? Yeah. What does she want now? I don't know, I admitted. Emma shrugged gently. Then find out or don't. But don't let it sit in your head. Her honesty hit harder than I expected. The next morning, another message came. I made a mistake. I need to explain everything. I sat at my office reading it twice. Memories came back without permission. The wedding, the silence, the ring in my hand, walking away while everyone watched. I leaned back. Why now? The anger I once carried felt distant now, weaker than before. Still there, but fading. Emma called during lunch. You okay? Yeah. You don't sound sure. I'm thinking. About her? Yeah. A pause. Do you want to talk about it? I don't know what to think anymore. Emma's voice stayed calm. Then don't force it. Just listen to yourself. That stayed with me all day. By evening, I made a decision. I replied. Fine. One meeting. Almost instantly, her response came. Thank you, please. It means a lot. I stared at it for a long time. Emma noticed when I arrived home. You decided. Yeah. She studied me. Are you sure? I don't want her in my life, I said, but I want closure. Emma nodded. Then go get it. No jealousy, no fear, just trust. That alone told me everything I needed to know about her. Later, I got in my car alone. The road ahead felt different this time. Not like revenge, not like anger. Just something unfinished finally asking to be closed. As I drove, I whispered to myself, "Why now, Olivia?" The cafe was still far ahead. And for the first time in years, I didn't know what I was about to hear. I arrived at the cafe before her. I chose a quiet corner and waited. The place felt smaller than I remembered. Olivia walked in a few minutes later. She looked exhausted. "Ethan," she said softly. "Hi, Olivia," I replied. She sat down slowly. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure I should. I needed to see you." "Why?" Her hands trembled. "Everything is falling apart." "I heard. Mason and we can't fix anything anymore." I nodded. "So it's true." She looked down. "Yes." A pause. "I made a mistake," she said. "A huge one." I stayed quiet. I thought I was choosing stability, but I lost everything that mattered. "Everything?" I asked. "You," she whispered. I leaned back. That choice was made years ago. Tears formed in her eyes. "I was wrong, Ethan." "I know. Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No." "Then why does it feel like I've lost you forever?" "Because you have." She inhaled sharply. "Is there any chance?" I looked at her for a long moment. "No." Her voice broke. "Even after everything we had?" "Especially after everything." Silence stretched between us. "I am sorry," she said again. "I believe you. Can we start over?" I exhaled slowly. "No." "Why?" "Some doors close and never reopen." She covered her face. "I ruined everything." "I forgive you," I said. She looked up quickly. "But forgiveness doesn't mean return." Her shoulders dropped. "I thought you might still care," she whispered. "I do care," I said, "just not in the way you need." She stood slowly. "I lost you completely. That happened a long time ago." She turned toward the door. "Goodbye, Ethan." "Goodbye, Olivia." She left the cafe crying. I stayed seated, feeling nothing but quiet closure. The bell above the door chimed softly. I watched her disappear outside. The cafe returned to silence. The waiter asked if I needed anything. I shook my head. "No, thank you." He nodded and walked away. I looked at the empty chair. Nothing felt heavy anymore, just final understanding. I whispered to myself, "It's over." Completely. For the first time, I felt free from the past that once controlled me. I stood up slowly and walked out of the cafe into the open air. The city felt different now, quieter somehow, lighter. I was reviewing final preparations for my wedding with Emma when my phone rang. "Ethan, it's Mason." I stayed silent for a moment. "You finally decided to call." "I should have done this a long time ago." "Why now?" "Because I can't carry it anymore," he said. "I ruined everything. I know that I ruined everything. I know that." I leaned back in my chair. "You did." "I betrayed you. I betrayed our friendship." "Yes," I said calmly. "You did." He exhaled shakily. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I really am." I looked at the ring box on my desk. "Sorry doesn't change the past." "I know," he whispered. I lost everything. Olivia, my marriage, my peace. Everything is falling apart. I stayed quiet. I thought I was doing the right thing, he continued, but I destroyed both our lives. No, I replied. You destroyed your own. I rebuilt mine. That made him pause. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I already forgave you, I said. You did? Yes, I answered. But forgiveness doesn't mean I go back. Silence stretched between us. I miss what we had as friends, he said. We were friends before, I said, but you chose otherwise. I know, his voice cracked. I regret it every day. Regret is something you live with, I said, not something you fix. He went quiet. After a moment, he asked, Are you happy now? I looked toward the window where Emma was waiting outside the office. Yes, I said honestly. I am. I hope you mean it, he said softly. I do. Another pause. I guess this is goodbye then, he said. It already was, I replied. The call ended. I set the phone down and sat in silence. For the first time, there was no anger left inside me, no need for answers, no desire for revenge, only peace. Emma walked in smiling. Ready for dinner planning? I stood up. More than ready. She laughed. That sounded serious. It is, I said. My real victory starts now. I glanced at Emma as she picked up her bag and sat beside me instead of leaving immediately. You seem different today, she said. I smiled faintly. I think something finally ended properly. Emma tilted her head. And what exactly ended? I looked at the office window again, the part of me that was still waiting for an apology. Emma nodded slowly. That sounds like freedom. I exhaled. It feels like it. She smiled. Then hold on to it. I stood and grabbed my coat. I don't plan to let go. I looked at Emma and said quietly that whatever came next, I was ready for it without fear, without the past holding me back anymore at all now, completely. I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my suit, staring at a man I barely recognized from years ago. You ready? Daniel asked from behind me. I gave a small smile. I think so. He walked up beside me, fixing my collar. You've come a long way, Ethan. I didn't think I would ever get here. Well, he said, you did. I nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. Today feels different. Different how? Like I'm finally not carrying anything anymore. Daniel smiled. That's the point. A knock came at the door, and Emma's voice followed. Can I come in? I looked at Daniel. Always. She stepped inside wearing her wedding dress, and for a moment, I forgot how to speak. You look overwhelmed, she said softly. I am, I admitted, but in a good way. She walked closer. Nervous? Not about you, I said quickly. Never about you. That made her smile. Good answer. Daniel cleared his throat. I'll give you two a minute. After he left, Emma took my hand. Are you thinking about her? I knew who she meant. A little, I admitted, but not the way I used to. What changed? I looked at her. You did. She squeezed my hand gently. Then let's not give the past any more space today. I nodded. Agreed. The ceremony began shortly after. Guests filled the room with quiet anticipation. I stood at the front, waiting. Emma walked down the aisle, and everything else faded. The officiant spoke, but I barely heard the words. Ethan Bennett, do you take Emma Sullivan to be your wife? I looked at Emma. Yes, I said clearly. I do. Emma smiled through tears. I do. The room broke into soft applause. When we exchanged vows, my voice didn't shake. I never thought I'd stand here again, I said. Years ago, I came home believing my future was already written. I was wrong. Emma listened closely. That version of my life broke me, I continued, but it also rebuilt me into someone stronger. Emma whispered, "You're stronger because you didn't stay broken." I nodded slightly and continued. In standing here with you, I finally understand what trust really means. Emma smiled. You taught me that too. We exchanged rings, and I felt a calm I had never known before. After the ceremony, the reception began with laughter, music, and people I genuinely cared about. Daniel raised a toast to Ethan and Emma. Everyone cheered. I leaned toward Emma. This is real. She laughed. It better be. Later, I stepped outside alone for a moment, holding something in my hand. The old engagement ring. The same one I once carried across oceans hoping for a future that never came. I looked at it quietly. Funny, I whispered. I thought this meant everything. Behind me, Emma's voice came softly. Everything okay? I turned slightly. Yeah, I just needed to do something. She walked up beside me. What is it? I opened my hand. Letting go. Without hesitation, I dropped the ring into the nearby trash bin. It made a soft sound, nothing dramatic, nothing painful, just final. Emma watched me. Do you feel better? I thought for a moment. I feel free. She smiled gently. That's better than better. We walked back inside together, hand in hand. The celebration continued around us, but something inside me had already settled into peace. I looked around the room at people laughing, dancing, and living in the moment. I used to think revenge would heal everything, I said quietly to Emma. She leaned closer. And now? Now I know it was never about revenge. Then what was it about? I watched the room, then her. It was about surviving long enough to build this. Emma smiled. And you did. I nodded. We did. For the first time in years, I felt no anger, no regret, no weight pulling me backward. Only gratitude for everything that had led me here, even the pain that shaped me. Emma rested her head on my shoulder. Happy? I answered without hesitation. Completely. The music played louder, laughter filled the hall, and I finally understood something I had spent years trying to learn. The greatest victory was never making others suffer for what they did. It was building a life so full that the past no longer had anywhere to live. And as I stood there with Emma, surrounded by everything I once thought I lost forever, I knew I had finally won in the only way that ever truly mattered.